up, y'all? It's been a long time, but I'm back. This is the Sexual Intellectual Podcast. I am your host, JD, aka He Who Pods. And if you watch weeknights, you know the glasses and the reflection means I'm also aka Rearview Mirror. Wow, lots to talk about since our last pod. We're going to hit some of the important stuff, but there's so much I won't be able to cover it all today. So we're going to start with some guilty verdicts. And first on the list is me. That's right, JD, guilty of being inconsistent, guilty of going back on his word of putting out a pod every Monday, and guilty of still eating ice cream because it's just too good. And that's a little joke. That ain't got nothing to do with this pod. But I am guilty. And so I got to be guilty. You know, I got to keep it real, got to be accountable. I ain't been doing what I'm supposed to be doing, period, in life. And so I'm working on fixing that. Always working, always working. Hopefully some progress. And that's our first guilty verdict of the day. Let's go to our second guilty verdict. It's a lot of guilt going on, so we got to talk about it. So some of this is old news, but I ain't been around to cover it a while ago. Hunter Biden was found guilty on all counts in gun case. And we're going to talk about that real quick. The quick version is a federal jury found Hunter Biden guilty on all 3 federal felony gun charges he faced, concluding that he violated laws meant to prevent drug addicts from owning firearms. The conviction marks the first time a president's immediate family member has been found guilty of a crime during their father's term in office, though his crimes predate Joe Biden's tenure as president. Let me pause for just a second. I should note that I'm reading from a CNN article because people like to criticize, so it's best that I quote my sources. It says in a statement, Hunter Biden said he was disappointed by the guilty verdict, but grateful for his family's love. President Biden expressed support for his son in a statement and said he would respect the judicial process. Hunter Biden could face up to 25 years in prison and a fine of up to $750,000 at sentencing, though he'll likely will receive far less than the maximum as a first-time offender. The judge said sentencing is usually set for 120 days following a verdict, which means it is likely to happen before Election Day. All right, so, man, listen, Hunter Biden was wilding out. He's been found guilty. There's a lot of speculation about what's going on. How much time will he face? We don't know those answers yet. This is what we do know. He was found guilty. Okay? And so, yeah, he could face up to 25 years in prison. He's the president's son. He's a first-time offender. Well, legally anyway. He's probably not going to get that type of time or that big fine. And so that's what's going on. A lot of speculation happened after then about would Biden pardon his son. He says that he will not. And people don't really believe him. That seems to be the overwhelming consensus. So there you go. Let me see. Anything else here? One juror told CNN, I really don't think that Hunter belongs in jail. The juror said they were mainly focused on evidence, not Hunter Biden's lifestyle, adding that politics did not come up. I don't believe that. The man said the jurors felt bad that Naomi Biden, Hunter's daughter, was called to testify. He said in his opinion, it was a mistake to put her on the stand. All right, so there you go. That's Hunter Biden. And let me see if there's any updates real quick before we move on. Yeah, people are confused. It says right now, as of today, it says Hunter Biden joins White House meeting befuddles Biden staff. People are confused why he's playing his dad so close after the bad performance, I guess you say, at the presidential debate. And we'll get back to that in a little while. All right. Let's keep going. The next guilty verdict on our list is Donald Trump. And so, as you probably know by now, Donald Trump was found guilty on the hush money case. So this article is from NBC News, And it says here, Donald Trump found guilty in historic New York hush money case. The jury's verdict is the first time a former president has been convicted of a crime. It says here, a New York jury found Donald Trump guilty on all 34 counts of falsifying business records. The first time a former U.S. president has been convicted of a crime. I don't know if y'all saw it, but as soon as I started reading, something flew right by. A little buggity bug, flying about during this heat. Anyway, so it says here the jury reached its verdict in the historic case after 9.5 hours of deliberation. And so, okay, this ad is taking up my screen. Here we go. It's all ads. Got it. Yeah. Continue reading. So much to press now. So he's supposed to be sentenced soon. That's July 11th, allegedly. We'll see what happens. That's 4 days before the Republican National Convention. He faces penalties from Nope. Read it wrong. He faces penalties from a fine to 4 years in prison on each count. Although it's expected he would be sentenced for the offenses concurrently, not consecutively. And of course, Trump said when it was all over, he said this was a disgrace. This was a rigged trial by a conflicted judge who was corrupt. That's what Donald Trump said to reporters right after. And so basically, he's been found guilty on falsifying 34 counts of business records related to a hush money payment his former lawyer Mitch McConnell made to adult film star Stormy Daniels in the final weeks of the 2016 presidential election. Trying to get to the part that really matters here. Okay, so the latest is actually that the judge delayed Trump's hush money sentencing until at least September after High Court's immunity ruling, which I guess we could cover that now too. So this is from AP News. It says, in a major reprieve for former President Donald Trump, sentencing for his hush money convictions was postponed Tuesday until at least September, if ever, as the judge agreed to weigh the possible impact of a new Supreme Court ruling on presidential immunity. Trump had been sentenced to face sentencing July 11th. Yeah, we know that already. He denies any wrongdoings. And so he's supposed to have falsified business records. We know that already. The postponement set the sentencing for September 18th at the earliest, if it happens at all, since Trump's lawyers are arguing that the Supreme Court ruling merits not only delaying the sentencing, but tossing out his conviction. Quote, the impact of the immunity ruling is a loud and clear signal for justice in the United States. Trump crowed on his Truth social media site after the sentencing was delayed. Okay, I don't need to know about Trump's tweets or whatever. Okay, so let's read this part here. It says the delay caps a string of political and legal wins for Trump in recent days. That's true. Including the Supreme Court's immunity ruling and a debate widely seen as a disaster for Democratic President Joe Biden. The immunity decision all but closed the door on the possibility that Trump could face trial in his 2020 election interference case in Washington before this November's vote. The timeline in itself is a victory for the former president, who has sought to delay his 4 criminal cases past the balloting. So let's get to that. An appeals court recently paused a separate Trump election interference case against Trump in Georgia. No trial date has been set. His federal classified documents case in Florida remains bogged down by pre-trial disputes that have resulted in an indefinite cancellation of the trial date. Monday's Supreme Court ruling granted broad immunity protections to presidents while also restricting prosecutors from citing any official acts as evidence in trying to prove a president's unofficial actions violated the law. The High Court held that former presidents are absolutely immune from prosecution for actions that fall within the core constitutional duties, such as interacting with the Justice Department, and at least presumptively immune for all other official acts. The justices left intact the long-standing principle that no immunity exists for purely personal acts. So they're saying basically that Trump covered up. Sorry, we're all over the place. There's a lot in this article. The whole Stormy Daniels thing is saying that Trump used money to pay her and silence her during his presidential run, and that he did so to cover up a personal act. the whole thing they're trying to debate now is, was this a personal thing, or was this more so about the presidential stuff? And so we'll see how that unravels rather. But yeah, so that's what he was found guilty of: 34 counts of falsifying business records, because he put that it was legal stuff that he was paying Cohen for, because Cohen paid off Stormy Daniels. He was instructed to do so. This is what they're saying, not me. And then Trump was basically paying him back and putting it as legal fees, but it wasn't. And so that's what he was found guilty of. But now it may not matter because of the Supreme Court ruling, which I just read a little bit about, which says that presidents cannot be held legally responsible. They have immunity for anything they do as president that has to do with being president. If it's something that's a personal act for you, not for the office of presidential office, then it's a little different. So there you go. That is what's going on with Trump. And now let's get to the next guilty verdict. I don't really need to read an article, but I'm going to pull up something here and insert it into the podcast here. But let's start with a little bit of a recap. So there was a presidential election between Trump and Biden, in which Biden really did bad. People call it a fumble, a debacle, all type of stuff. It didn't go well, is the point. And so he is guilty of fumbling the ball, as they say in football. He dropped the ball, folks. That's what I'm saying. Biden is guilty of. He is guilty of making Trump look really good on television. He is guilty of making himself and the Democratic Party look bad, incapable, etc. And a lot is going on right now. So here is a video from someone I'm a fan of. This is, once again, I've used their content before, so I want to give credit. This is Under the Desk News, talking a little bit about what's going on with Biden right now.
Democratic governors from across the nation are in a closed-door meeting at the White House with President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris right now. Earlier today, President Biden told the press and the DNC that he would not be pushed out. Vice President Harris reiterating that they are on this ticket together. And he's right. The decision on if President Biden continues on as the candidate for the Democrats in this coming election is his alone to make. It was his name on the ticket during the primary. It was his name on those donation forms that raised $91 million for this campaign. And you cannot take away his delegates and you cannot take away his funding without his permission. That's the structure that we're in. The only person who can replace Biden if he decided to step away is Kamala Harris, because her name was also on the ticket and also on those donation forms. The meeting that they're having right now with all the Democratic governors is off record and closed to the press. Not to say that we won't get a recap afterwards, but...
Thanks again to Under the Desk News for that information, and that is fresh off the press. So Biden is currently in the hot seat. Other Democrats are speaking about their disapproval and speaking out about possibly replacing Biden as the Democratic candidate. But as Under the Desk News just told us, there is a little bit of a problem with that. It's not so easy to just remove him if he's not willing to cooperate. And so at this moment, when I'm recording, he's saying no, he's not going to do that. So we'll see what happens, because it would really be up to kind of him. It's a weird situation. What I will say is this: if Biden is removed as the presidential candidate, this would be a historical moment. This would set a new precedent, and it would be really, really interesting to see how this all happens. Also, that Democratic candidate would not have a lot of time before November, as we are already in July. I know it's the beginning of July, but we are in July, and they would have to now get on a presidential run and, a presidential campaign with just months left. And so that would be really interesting. I mean, sure, they have the $91 million to do so, but who knows how that would go. Also, I don't know what happens if Biden says no and everyone else says yes. So we'll see how that goes, and we'll see what else Under the Desk News can report to us. I just want to give another shout out to Under the Desk News. They're great, and they're very helpful in these situations with breaking things down. If you haven't already followed Under the Desk News and you watch this, you probably should. They're great. And so that's the end of our political segment. Let's move into something a little different. And keep things going here. Let's go all the way left. Let's use our term of the week. And term of the week, I actually had this last pod and didn't have enough time to use it. So y'all might have heard of it by now. I know a few of you have hit me up about this term. And so shout out to those people who are keeping their ear to the streets. And so this is from CNBC.com. The headline reads, "Millennials are quiet vacationing rather than asking their boss for PTO. There's a giant workaround culture," is the quote. It said paid days off from work aren't a guarantee for many Americans, but even when they do get them, they're leaving them on the table. A majority, 78% of U.S. workers say they don't take all their PTO days, and it's highest amongst Gen Z workers and millennials, according to a new Harris poll survey of 1,170 American workers. Young professionals say they don't ask for time off because they feel pressure to meet deadlines and be productive. And they get nervous requesting PTO because they don't want to look like a slacker, says Libby Rodney, Chief Strategy Officer at the Harris poll. That's not to say they're not taking breaks, they're just not telling their boss. And so it says millennials are most likely to be quiet vacationing. Millennials in particular have found workarounds to play hooky. Nearly 4 in 10 say they've taken time off without communicating with their manager. You don't say. Similar shares say they, quote, move their mouse. I have so many things to say, but I'm going to just keep reading. They move their mouse to show they're still active on their company's messaging platforms like Slack or Microsoft Teams when they're not really working, and they've scheduled a message to send outside of regular hours to give the impression they're working overtime. Oh, there's a giant workaround culture at play, Rodney says. While Gen Zers tend to be more vocal about workplaces that shame people for wanting to ask off work, millennials would rather take matters into their own hands, but under the radar. They will figure out how to get appropriate work-life balance, but it's happening behind the scenes, Rodney adds. It's not exactly quiet quitting, but more like quiet vacationing. And so that's our term of the week, folks. Quiet vacationing. Those who are chilling, relaxing, kicking it. All of those old terms that I just used instead of working and instead of taking paid time off. This is the new workaround. This is the new term. This is the term of the week, quiet vacationing. And people are doing it. People are saying F the man, F their boss, F time off. I'm going to do my own thing. Moving mouses and sending time, sending a message to make it look like you're working overtime is mad funny, especially when you scheduled it. Smart and hilarious to me. I say good job to those people because that's a smart way to do it. It's foul that you're stealing company time, but it's a smart way of doing it. Let's keep it going here. What else I got for y'all? All right, so Forbes wrote an interesting article that I thought I should share a little bit here. And the headline reads, "Why are non-monogamous relationships thriving?" A psychologist answers. It says non-monogamous relationships have been gaining interest and popularity among people looking for love. A 2021 Frontiers in Psychology study revealed that among a sample of over 300 single U.S.-based adults, 1 in 6 desired to engage in polyamory. 1 in 9 had engaged in some form of polyamory at some point in their lives, and 1 in 15 knew someone who had previously engaged in or were currently involved in a polyamorous arrangement. These involve consensual, non-traditional relationships with multiple partners and different arrangements for romantic, sexual, or emotional connections. Such relationships can take on many different forms, including open relationships, polyamory, and quote-unquote swinging. An extensive literature review by Virginia Tech researchers Shivangi Gupta, Ari Tarantino, and Coraline Sanner, published in the Journal of Family Theory and Review in November, highlights how non-monogamous relationships are perceived to be more promiscuous, perverted, and untrustworthy than monogamous ones. Such relationships, the review suggests, are also viewed as quote-unquote unsustainable and quote prone to jealousy. However, the glaring question remains, why are non-traditional relationships gaining popularity and flourishing despite unfavorable perceptions? So it asks, why do people choose non-monogamy? So there are several factors that act as precursors to individual preferring to stray from conventional relationship structures, according to the review. Sexual demographics: people who are white, younger, members of sexual minority groups. People who are white, younger, members of sexual minority groups, non-binary or transgender are more likely to seek out non-monogamous relationships. Okay. Value-based differences: individuals who perceive an abundance in romantic alternatives and hold liberal political and religious views are more open to breaking traditional relationship norms. Interesting. Personality differences also seem to be aiding the evolving relationship paradigm. Individuals high in openness exhibit a greater desire for non-traditional relationships, showcasing a preference for variety, change, and new experiences. 4. Unfulfilled needs. Unfulfilled needs also encourage individuals to gain diversity in their romantic lives. A 2020 study published in Current Sexual Health Reports found that 42% of participants believed their non-monogamous relationships provided the benefits of diversified need fulfillment. For instance, an individual in a hierarchical polyamorous relationship might enjoy more commitment, satisfaction, and better communication from their primary partner. Secondary partners might offer more passion and sexual satisfaction. What do people get from non-monogamous relationships? What do people get from non-monogamy? Non-monogamous relationships owe their popularity in part to the positive sexual relationship. No. Non-monogamous relationships owe their popularity in part to the positive relationship and sexual outcomes they yield. Individuals in non-monogamous relationships experience greater satisfaction and commitment than their monogamous counterparts. Non-traditional relationships result in greater satisfaction, boasting better communication and more openness and need fulfillment than conventional relationships. A 2015 study published in Sexual and Relationship Therapy found that adults aged 55 and above were happier in non-exclusive, unconventional relationships compared to those in monogamous relationships. Non-monogamous older adults also reported more sexual frequency and better health than their traditional counterparts. So there's more. If y'all want to go, y'all can look up the Forbes article. I just thought this was an interesting topic to bring to the pod because non-monogamous relationships seem to be discussed a lot more in public lately. And, people seem to be straying away from traditional relationships and dating. And I myself am one of those people and have been for a long time. And I know I get a barrage of questions all the time when I speak about these things. And so I thought it would be helpful to the viewers for just to have some information there about it and see what these studies say. I also thought it was interesting that there were all these studies happening dating back to 2015. So yeah, there you go. Seems to be quite a rise and seems to be an interesting topic to discuss. I know it's a hot topic on all the social media websites as well. So I figure, we bring it here and maybe clip it up. You know what I mean? Let's hit some quickies and get up out of here. I know we don't normally talk about sports, but I thought this was really interesting. And this is more business than sports. And this is a Reuters article. The headline reads, Boston Celtics owner championship. Nope. Should call this episode Nope. Boston Celtics owners put championship winning team up for sale. That's the headline. It says Boston Celtics ownership group, Boston Basketball Partners, led by Wyc Grousbeck, said on Monday they intend to sell all the shares of the team who won the NBA championship last month. Quote, the controlling family of the ownership group, after considerable thought and internal discussion, has decided to sell the team for estate and family planning considerations. Wow. I thought that was wild. That's more business than sports. And I said, we got to share that one up here. Now let's go to one that is close to my heart and a little funny. This is from the New York Post. The headline reads, Cold Stone Creamery sued over claims pistachio ice cream has no pistachios in it. It says here, pistachio no. Cold Stone Creamery is being sued over claims its pistachio ice cream has no pistachios. That's right, folks. 0. A woman visited a Cold Stone location in Levittown, Long Island, in July 2022 and ordered pistachio ice cream and claimed there were no pistachios in the ingredients. Now, parent company Paula Brands is facing legal action. There's even a picture of their ice cream in the article here. And so that's all I want to tell y'all. Y'all could go look up the rest. I thought this was wild, funny, and it hit me a little close to the sweets. You know, it pulled on my heartstrings, my addicted strings, my sugary strings. Okay? Now let's go to routers. This is routers. The headline reads, TikTok preparing a US copy of the app's algorithm, sources say. TikTok is working on a clone of its recommendation algorithm for its 170 million users that may result in a version that operates independently of its Chinese parent and be more palatable to American lawmakers who want to ban it, according to sources with direct knowledge of the efforts. We will probably speak more about this very soon, because I also saw an article recently that said they are going to do some different things with TikTok, and I think it's worth coming back to. So I just wanted to give y'all that on the Quickie segment, and we will probably come back to what's going on with TikTok very soon. This is the last one. And if y'all want to hear more about this, y'all can let me know in the comments, and we could expand on it next time. This is, once again, the New York Post. It says here, Hinge finds a way to ban quote-unquote ghosting on app to defeat dating burnout. Quote, focus on quality over quantity. It says here, no more boo-hooing. Hinge is now ghost busting. The popular dating app recently announced its latest update to ban ghosting and help singles overcome dating fatigue. Hinge's new, quote, your turn limits feature will help daters to limit unanswered messages. I think that's really interesting. And it speaks to the fact that they know ghosting is happening more and more on these sites. So I just thought that was worth a share. And that's the Quickie segment. And so, ladies and gentlemen, that's the end of this episode. Try to be informative and quick today. You know, I try not to make this pod too long. And that's that. Once again, I'm JD. Thank you for being here. Thank you for sticking around. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for watching. If you haven't already, please subscribe, especially if you made it this far. And I will see you again very soon.